Greetings and welcome. To start this video, I would like to make a special shout out to Thorgy's Arcade on YouTube. The long-form essay format fighting game videos Aaron produces have been a great inspiration and guide for making this video, particularly his Build the Roster series. On top of that, his video Darkstalkers Fighting Game Retrospective is an excellent summary of the legacy of Darkstalkers, and greatly reflects my views on why this franchise is awesome and deserves a revival. So I've been a fake fighting game fan for a long time. I've always been more single-player oriented and PvP adverse in most every genre of game I play, so fighting games have always felt a bit out of reach for me. And despite what my little brother would tell you, I was never very good at fighting games either, beyond mashing and occasionally blocking. But I always did enjoy them in low-stakes situations. Casual Smash Brothers or Power Stone during a sleepover at a friend's house, trying to beat my own time attack or survival scores in Tekken Tag, or getting tilted and rowdy over drunken Dead or Alive 4 matches in the college dorms. But as I've gotten older, I've had to take a backseat and get my fighting game fix online. I delighted coming home from work on a Friday night, kicking back with a beer and some takeout, and watching YouTube content such as Friday Night Fisticuffs with the Super Best Friends crew, or The Online Warrior with Maximilian Dude. Through these kinds of content creators, I discovered and started watching tournaments, learning more about fighting games on a technical level, gaining an understanding of high-level play, and what makes for great moments, wild accidents, and huge upsets. Nowadays, I enjoy a full buffet of FGC-oriented content. I've even purchased fighting games, knowing full well they're going to gather dust in my Steam library, never to be installed, because I want to support the cause that's given me a place on the couch next to the action, even if I'm never touching the sticks or going to majors. So for important context for all of this video, let it be known that I'm coming at this from the perspective of a super casual spectator. And on the subject of spectacle, one fighting game franchise captured my heart at an early age and has never let go, even now over 25 years later, and that is Darkstalkers. From the iconic characters to the stylish art, the weird cartoonish animations, the dark lore, and aggressive mechanics, Darkstalkers has always been my personal favorite. But good lord, it hasn't been easy. And though the niche community's efforts have been doing their best, officially, Darkstalkers has been put on life support, with meager offerings of cameos, tweets, re-releases, and rumors providing a drip feed to the desperate hopefuls like myself. And now, in 2026, whispers in the dark stir once again. Vampire Savior has been announced as the throwback tournament at EVO 2026. The dark devoted stir with ghoulish hunger. Will something be announced? Some skins? A crossover? A character in Street Fighter 6? Or dare we dream of a new game announcement? Or most likely nothing. Again. Either way, Darkstalkers are back in the limelight, if all too briefly, and I felt now was a good enough time to put my thoughts into word on something I've been percolating on for what seems like a decade now. Many fans of Darkstalkers like myself have pondered what if, when, and how a new Darkstalkers game would appear. As for me, I feel as though I have started to reach the end of my concept, but also hit a bit of a writer's block. That said, my idea is not fully complete. So, for better and worse, I have decided to take this idea, near and dear to my fanboy heart, and offer it up to the cruel, chaotic void of the internet, with the hope of stirring some sort of discussion or constructive feedback to help make my idea complete. So, without further ado, this is my totally imaginary, absolute pipe dream, wish upon a star fantasy pitch for Darkstalkers 4 Versus. So the first question is obviously, why an assist-based versus game? The simple answer is, back when I was first forming my idea, Capcom didn't have a new Darkstalkers game, and Capcom didn't have any new versus games either. Almost a decade later, we still have no new Darkstalkers game and no new versus games. And it looks like we're going to be waiting for a good while longer on the versus thing. Maybe I was watching Morrigan getting blended in some lightning loops, or watching Shinko trying to accomplish anything, when the thought dawned on me, why not both? I think it could be a tremendous draw in the FGC for casual and hardcore audiences alike. Darkstalkers' DNA is already in a ton of modern fighting games, so a versus format would make for a new spin on a relatively known gameplay style. One flaw I often see in Vampire Savior is that speed is king, and the tier list is almost directly correlated to how fast a character moves and attacks. Having assists could greatly help slower characters, or open all kinds of creative combinations in conjunction with the outlandish moves already in Darkstalkers. Also, the hectic nature of a tag fighter is almost cartoonish on its own, with all of the zany things happening on screen at any given time. So you could probably get away without having to make a lot of those intricate mid-combat animations that make Darkstalkers iconic. You could relegate those kind of things to intros, outros, taunts, character interactions, etc. You definitely still need them, but probably less of them. Next, Monster Thirst has exploded across the internet since I first started this idea. Enthusiasts have spoken with their time and wallets, and an extended roster of monster mommies and demonic daddies would go gonzos. Morrigan alone has sold a mountain of merch without a new Darkstalkers game to buy anywhere in sight. A crossover opportunity would draw all kinds of interest, not to mention new fan art, fanfiction, cosplays, and other community feedback. Now, when I first started this idea, there were practically no other versus games around, so why not capitalize on the empty seat? The cycle of fighting games usually has 1v1 fighters in the spotlight for a while, and once they start sunsetting, the tag fighters roll in to keep things interesting while the next iteration of the big 1v1 games is in development. But after the flop of MVCI, Dragon Ball FighterZ was pretty much the only thing making a splash during an extended drought. So now, back in the present, the 1v1 cycle is ending, and multiple titles have now appeared to try and take the vacant tag fighter throne. But, again, speaking as a spectator here, I remain unconvinced. I have been trying, in earnest, to get into these new games. Maybe I've been watching fighting games for so long that I'm not as easily impressed as I used to be. Maybe they're still too fresh, still in development, and I don't fully appreciate their complexities. Maybe it's the superhero fatigue. Maybe it's the hyper-stylized, graphic anime look that has become oversaturated in gaming. But going off my gut feeling here, something is just off. Tag fighters are a tricky business. They have to be cool enough for casuals to push through the complexity, interesting enough for new competitors looking for fresh ideas, and samey enough for old competitors that just want the old game again. And if executed well, I think Darkstalkers could do just that. It's cool and distinct enough to stand out from the crowd. It's certainly old enough for the old FGC heads, and it's old enough that a new entry would be new for the young FGC heads. This could make for a great opportunity for Capcom to scout the field and see what other games are trying and what's working or not. They could then turn around with the lessons learned and ideas cultivated and use Darkstalkers Versus as a test bed. And hey, if it doesn't work out, you already invented the wheel with the MVC series. All of these other titles are having to go out of their way to differentiate themselves. Capcom already has the winning formula, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if you do manage to find that great new thing, all the better for your future plans. So that's the why of all of this. So now let's get to the how.
Homer? Homie? What he's typed will be a window into his madness. Feeling fine. Wow, that's a relief. This is less encouraging.
Hello! Let it be known, I am not a writer, artist, or creative of any notable skill, so the story I have concocted is not much. Fortunately, most fighting games have bare-bones stories anyway. Unfortunately, Darkstalkers is one of the few exceptions to that rule, so I am fairly open to other ideas, corrections, and notes here. There will be some placeholders and unfinished bits. That disclaimer out of the way, here we go. To begin with, we pick up where Vampire Savior left off. Jeddah has been defeated and the Makai world has been restored. However, the shock of this event has caused distortions, tears in reality, and other phenomena to appear over the years. The great houses have been working in tandem to combat these threats while searching for a way to permanently fix the problem, while of course scheming behind the scenes to find ways to capitalize on the situation for their own ends. Dimitri has wormed his way back into the graces of the high houses with his diligent efforts to fight these new threats, much to the chagrin of Morrigan, who was otherwise flippant and uninterested in the politics and scheming of Makai governance. She longs for something truly exciting to happen. Elsewhere, a now young adult Anita is, again, at the grave of Donovan as she reflects on the night of his passing. She was overpowered by Dee in their clash, but when he finally sunk his teeth into her neck, a dark force awakened in Anita, actually draining all of the evil power out of Dee instead. Weakened and wounded, Donovan, now returned to his senses, dies a clean human death in Anita's arms, happy his madness has ended, but frightened for Anita's future. Since then, Anita's own dark psychic power has been growing at an alarming rate, leading other vampire hunters in her organization to wonder if she was ever human. Anita gets up to leave, still blaming herself for his death, but determined. She is on the hunt for a dangerous sorcerer who is believed to have harvested human souls to gain power for some sort of ritual in connection with the tears. At the ritual site, the sorcerer can be seen conversing with one of the members of the high houses we saw earlier. The council member expresses satisfaction with the recent leaps in progress, but impatience as well. They inform the sorcerer that the hunters are onto them and time is running short. The sorcerer attributes their progress to a new ally, and that they are ready to perform the ritual that will open the path to the Tomb of Ancient Power. That's the MacGuffin of the game. Moments later, Anita breaks in. The council member vanishes from sight, but not before being observed by a bat creature hanging in the corner. A clash ensues, and Anita gets the upper hand. But when she moves in for the final blow, a demon unlike anything she has ever seen appears and opens a portal that Anita falls into. In an instant, Anita is dumped out several miles away. She panics, knowing the ritual will begin at nightfall and she can't make it back in time. Just then, Morrigan appears and offers assistance, which Anita accepts begrudgingly. They fly back to the ritual site and meet up with Lilith, who is fighting off monsters that are coming out of portals all around. They fight their way through to the sorcerer, but are too late. The sorcerer lifts up two mysterious relics as powerful energy bursts forth from the runes drawn on the floor. A massive tear opens and hurricane winds burst out, throwing Morgan, Lilith, and Anita to the winds. The sorcerer and their ally ascend into this tear, an ancient city visible on the other side. The sorcerer revels in their new power granted by these new relics as they fire a powerful blast, closing the tear behind them and annihilating the ritual site. All over the Makai world, massive tears open. Whole other realities start to crash into existence. Destruction on a massive scale ensues. The Darkstalkers across the Makai world set out once again to rise to the threat, and with a variety of motives, seek the now massive dark energy, calling out to the strongest the world over. Can the heroes reach this tomb and intercept the sorcerer? What frightful new fighters will emerge from these tears, and will they be friend or foe? What does fate have in store for Anita? Destiny will be decided in the devilish dance of the night in Darkstalkers 4 Versus. And yeah, if it wasn't obvious when I said it earlier, I am not a writer.
You stay here till you're no longer insane. Chili will be good tonight.
Now that the setup is out of the way, we can get to the fun part, the roster. We're going to start with the easiest part, the home team, the Darkstalkers. All 18 of the originals will return. For Pyron, we'll just say that some of his essence was stashed off-world, and now that he has regained his strength, he is back and he's pissed. This allows for a redesign, so he won't be banned in tournament. For Jeddah, we'll say that he survived after being ejected from the collapse of the Majigan at the end of Vampire Savior. After drifting in the empty void, he found his way back to the Makai through a tear, and has been lying in wait for his chance to strike. For Donovan, I mentioned how he was granted a clean death, right? Well, upon reaching those pearly gates, Donovan is denied entry for the innumerable atrocities of D, but given a chance for penance. Donovan is sent back, Dompier removed, and now part angel, a Nephilim, instead. His task? To destroy the MacGuffin, and if necessary, Anita. This way, we can sneak him back into the story and get the good/divine/angelic character that I've seen proposed a lot of the time in roster talks without going too far off-brand. Fun fact, Capcom had that idea when first drafting Lilith to be an angel that was Morrigan's sister. As for new Darkstalkers, I'm thinking 6. Obviously, we have Anita at center stage. As the new protagonist, she would be fairly balanced with a nice assortment of tools for defense and offense. She would fight with Donovan's sword, which she keeps as a memento, not with the strength of her arms, rather the psychic power of her mind, similar to how Donovan fought. Also, she could tap into her newfound powers by draining opponents to get a buff, like Rogue in Marvel vs. Capcom. Then I would take the two former secret characters, Shadow and Marionette, and make them real. For Shadow, I'm imagining moves similar to 12 from Third Strike or Eddie from Guilty Gear, including the ability to mimic attacks or steal abilities like Seth, and some sort of X-Copy super to give homage to his origins, but, actually useful. I'm also thinking some stretch and morph moves similar to Super Skrull, Venom, or Merkava from Under Night. For Marionette, creepy toys, creepy clowns, and now creepy animatronics have gotten a lot of traction, so there's great content to pull from for inspiration here. Very cute at first glance, but a monster within, hiding all sorts of weapons, traps, and torture devices used in her gameplay. A lot of Darkstalkers have unique forms of movement, even in their basic walk forward and back animations. For Marionette, I would like to see her move like the marionettes in the Devil May Cry series, with some obvious speed adjustments. Next, we have the Sorcerer. This one is pretty wide open, as long as they fill the story obligations. Gender, race, attitude, and gameplay are all up for grabs. Perhaps This could be the place to fill the witch role, unseen thus far in the franchise, and there are plenty of witches to pull from in fighting games for inspiration. Same goes for the noble demonic house member that backs the sorcerer. As long as they fill that aristocratic role, I am all ears for ideas. And the final slot is pretty much free. My ideas lean towards either the sorcerer's assistant slash bodyguard, some sort of plant monster or spider. I've seen gargoyle or Dullahan thrown around, or a new vampire hunter that might have connections to Anita. It would be pretty cool to see what modern Capcom could do with these 3 slots, so I'm pretty carefree about it. Or perhaps we could see unused concepts brought back. Calling back to the original design idea from the golden age of monster cinema, the Invisible Man, the Phantom of the Opera, and the Bride of Frankenstein remain unused. If we look at the globe, all sorts of myths and monsters remain untapped, from places like the Mediterranean, North America, Polynesia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. My only stipulation is that I'm looking at the whole roster and we have a lot of spellcasters slash zoners, so whatever fills the slots otherwise would work. Extra points for a grappler. All in all, that makes 24 Darkstalkers total. And if this weren't a versus game, I think that would be a great roster on its own and much more feasible in actuality. But since this is my fantasy project, I would have a classic mode, which would just have these 24 characters and does away with the tag mechanics entirely for the purists out there. The arcade ladders would fill in the story of what the Darkstalkers were up to since Vampire Savior, or establish the origins of the new characters. Even the story could function mostly the same, just cut out the parts about other realities. But this is a versus game, so who are the Darkstalkers going against? But before we answer that question, I would like to share my thought process on the selections for this game. Although this is an entirely made-up fighting game, I wanted to create a roster that would be a legitimate fit for the series, and not just throwing out anything I think is cool. To that end, I have come up with several criteria for consideration with these characters. They are as follows. 1. Spooky factor. Is this character scary, or at least horror adjacent? 2. Dark lore edginess. Does this character's lore and appearance stand up to the Makai world standard? 3. Cartooniness / silliness. Does this character offer weirdness or whimsy? The opposite of number 2. Too much in either direction can be a disqualification. 4. Style / sexiness. Does this character offer a unique look, weirdness, sexiness, or other interesting features? 5. Scope / accessibility. Is this even remotely within the realm of reason as a get? And finally, 6. Function. I know. But honestly ask, does this character offer interesting gameplay? Can this character be imported or copied from another fighting game character, Capcom in particular? Now, none of these points are a strict rule, rather a guideline where a given character needs to check enough of these boxes to pass a vibe check of sorts. So with that in mind, we go back to the prologue. Who is this mysterious demon aiding the sorcerer? Why, yes, the demon backing the sorcerer is none other than Gremory from Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Gremory is established as a demon who can manipulate gravity with the power of the Dark Moon and can travel across space and dimension. Using her powers, she traveled to the Makai world and offered to team up with the sorcerer in exchange for aid in resurrecting her boss, the Demon Lord Baal. not to be confused with Morrigan's adopted father, Belial. As for gameplay, who else is purple, manipulates gravity, and flies around?
Playtime is ended.
Magneto, of course. Combined with the plethora of attacks from Ritual and Curse of the Moon, Gremory has a lot of source material to draw from. And for an extra twist, maybe we give her some portal punches, or the ability to catch projectiles in portals and send them back, making for a big threat on the villain team. And for a grand scheme like this, you better believe she brought backup, such as... A vampire in Bale's army, Bloodless is obsessed with blood. She bathes in it, her weapons and clothes are made of it, and freely wields it to attack. Mechanically, I'm envisioning a sort of resource management similar to Nago Ryuki from Guilty Gear Strive. She expends blood on powerful attacks, but can burn out if used too recklessly. She can then recover blood by using certain specials or supers. She could also use her umbrella to repel attacks on the ground or as a movement tool in the air, similar to Rachel Alucard from BlazBlue. And Bloodless isn't the only covetous creature at Gremory's back. Another of Bale's servants, Valifar, is a demon of greed and gold, who loves to steal people's souls by tempting and swindling those lured in by the riches he offers. He is a flashy showman and a gambler, attacking with poker chips, stacks of coins, and literally throwing money at you till you die. I would add playing cards to boost his arsenal as well, similar to Oswald from King of Fighters or Gambit from Marvel vs. Capcom. Gameplay-wise, Valifar would be a trickster character, light on damage but capable of stealing life, meter, or inflicting debuffs from traps, counters, and other specials he can perform, turning what appears to be an advantage to his opponent into a really raw deal. And speaking of raw deals... Now remember how I said Bale was dead? Well, maybe? In the true ending of Ritual of the Night, Bale was banished back to Limbo, along with Dominique, who summoned him in collusion with Gremory. In the extra DLC, Dominique's Curse, the story picks up after the battle with Dominique, who is not happy. She swears revenge, and fights to find a way out of Limbo. To do that, she gathers demonic power, even fighting Gremory and ultimately leading to a confrontation with Bale. In the true ending, she defeats Bale, but it is not made clear what happens to him. Dialogue hints that Bale may now be dwelling inside Dominique, but we have no way to know, because when Dominique makes it back to Earth, she has amnesia. So for my purposes, we're gonna go with Bale hitching a free ride to the human world with Dominique, but the scenario could easily be reworked if needed. However the story goes, Gremory is pissed, and snatches Dominique at some point leading up to the game. Gremory restores Dominique's memory, but selectively, only enough to reignite her thirst for revenge and service to Bale. Now a slave, Dominique fights with ferocity to rival any demon. Gameplay-wise, Dominique has a very complete kit. She can use a whip, has a dive kick, a blink, a powerful advancing elbow strike, can summon lesser demons, and several elemental spells at her command. As an added mechanic, let's say her spells can charge her whip with elemental properties, like Silver Samurai in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And looking at the Bale encounter, I can easily see Dominique unleashing a level 3 super similar to Chaos Dimension from Shuma Gorath. But who does she want revenge on? Why, none other than the hero and main character of Ritual of the Night, Miriam. Miriam is a shardbinder. As an orphan, she was infused with crystals by alchemy, intended to contain demonic power as a living battery and cursed to die. Over the course of Ritual of the Night, she absorbs a wide variety of demonic crystals, making her a Swiss Army knife of spells, attacks, weapons, and movement tools she uses to traverse the Hellhold Castle and defeat the forces of darkness. The possibilities are staggering on this character, but I'm envisioning a playstyle similar to Monster Hunter, swapping between her assortment of blue rose weapons for stylish combos. Aside from her intimidating battle prowess, Miriam is a kind individual with a pure heart, even nursing Dominique back to health after she escaped Limbo. Miriam would be the third member of the hero team. Joining up with Anita and Morrigan, her knowledge on Gremory would be vital to stopping the Sorcerer's plan and rescuing Dominique. But there's an even better expert when it comes to combating Gremory, an even more capable demon hunter. Zangetsu is a powerful exorcist having fought the forces of darkness for over a decade. He lost an arm and an eye in the process and became cold and grizzled as he lost friends and allies in the war against the demons and the alchemists that summoned them. Using Ofuda, spells written onto paper, he replaced his arm with a prosthetic and uses magic to see the aura of things with his missing eye. He also possesses the Zangetsuto sword, said to be a special weapon capable of truly harming Gremory. In Ritual of the Night, he gives that sword to Miriam in a gamble to catch Gremory off guard, which pays off, but also results in him being dragged into some sort of torture dimension of Gremory's design. Fun fact, fans theorize that Curse of the Moon 1 and 2 games are actually where Zangetsu ends up. The ending of Ritual of the Night presumes he is dead, but camera hacks reveal he may still be alive, but that very well may be a bug, or an Easter egg, or some sort of developer trick we just don't know. Since we already have tears in reality popping up all over, we'll just say that one opened up in the torture dimension and Zangetsu popped out into the Makai world. Easy peasy. As for his gameplay, Zangetsu already comes with a bunch of great moves and tools to be implemented. The situation practically begs for some sort of Sekiro-like ninja tools deployed from the arm thing. Since we already have a lot of fast slashing characters, I would give Zangetsu some slow, intentional, maybe even charged slashes he could perform, almost like a Sam Show character, with swings that are risky to try but hit for big damage. Finally, let him perform setups by using Ofuda talismans that could block, slow, freeze, or lock opponents in or lock assists out to help even the odds with faster opponents. Overall, Bloodstained feels like a very reasonable get. It definitely ticks most of the boxes for the vibe check. A little light on humor, but plenty of spooky and sexy to go around. Gremory is pretty much essential to the plot I've concocted. Miriam and Bloodless have already crossed over into other games, and now in 2026 a new Bloodstained game is on the horizon, which makes for good cross-promotion. Of course, the new game could also derail all of my plans and character picks. Like I said, this has been a long time in the making, and a sequel didn't even exist when I started planning all of this out. And that will come up again multiple times. In the case of the next set of characters, a crossover is practically a no-brainer because it's already a different version of the concept I'm presenting here. So I had mentioned mysterious relics in the Sorcerer's possession in the prologue. Well, the first of those relics is the Skull Heart. Yes, this next section of Incursion Fighters comes from Skullgirls. Now, I know the state of the Skullgirls IP is not looking great right now, but I'm not going to let that stop me because this is all imaginary anyway. The game essentially combined Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Darkstalkers over a decade ago. So, it really is a shoo-in for this crossover fighter. The movesets are there, the vibes are there, so I'm really just picking the characters I'd like to see. All you need to do is cook up a story reason for their presence. Speaking of, the story of Skullgirls is one where all of the arcade endings are technically canon and also not. The beginning of the story is consistent, but where it all ends is different for every character. Some characters' timeline of events don't even make sense when compared to others, and the writers even threw in an all different possibilities line to make things even more complicated. Even the fan base has been left wondering what the true ending is. So for our purposes, we're just gonna ballpark. Since Marie was the last and probably final character released, we're working with that. Okay. So, for a very quick recap, Marie, the Skullgirl, is on a rampage. She is powered by the Skull Heart, which is essentially a super powerful monkey's paw.
I wish for a turkey sandwich on rye bread with lettuce and mustard. And I don't want any zombie turkeys. I don't want to turn into a turkey myself. And I don't want any other weird surprises. You got it?
That power comes from some less than benevolent gods called the Trinity that need chaos and death to break free from their extra-dimensional prison. Now, someone, probably a collection of the good guys, defeats Marie and shatters the Skull Heart. Marie survives with a fragment of the heart still inside her. With the power of love and friendship, Marie rallies the souls of the dead trapped in the heart in rebellion against the unseen gods, and wins her freedom and rides off into the sunset. Hooray! But Double, Major Domo of the Trinity, is still out there. So my idea is that the sorcerer encounters the abyss where the Trinity are sealed away while researching the tears, and brokers a deal. In exchange for repairing the Skull Heart with the dark energies laden in the Makai world, the sorcerer gets one free use, no strings attached, to harvest souls to power their ritual. Now the Trinity couldn't possibly slip through such a tiny tear with their enormous power, so they would have to send a broker to oversee the deal, which leads to our first character pick.
Have you come to get confession?
First up on the lineup is Double, the shape-shifting, plot-scheming, people-devouring ambassador of the Trinity. Double is a monster who can morph into other characters to do their attacks. I mean, just look at this. Imagine all the exciting new moves it could execute in this new environment. And the real nightmare was all of the animation work that went into this character. Woof! And, like I said, for gameplay, it's all good, straight out of the can. Moving on.
Let's address this mess. There will be no more wishes and no more Skullgirls.
As the last Skullgirl who broke the cycle, Marie would still have a connection to the Skull Heart and would inevitably feel its revival, being called back to fight once more. Definitely one of the most interesting characters in their roster too, using her ghostly maid tools as weapons and calling her undead allies to fight alongside her. Now I did consider Lab 8's secret weapon Peacock for this slot, seeing as they are besties, but we already have a lot of characters with zoning options, so for our purposes, maybe they came together but got separated somehow. But fear not, another one of Lab 8's agents would be along to chaperone the youngsters as well.
Now that's just bassist.
Another outstanding design coming from Skullgirls, Big Band was a police officer turned into musical cyborg after being murderized for messing with the Medici crime family. He is a large bruiser type, which the roster really needs at this point too. He's got parries, deflects, armor and can even bust out a trumpet to style on the opponent, which creates all kinds of hype moments, like this.
Let's give a big hand for Big Bad. Can anybody stop this flying machine?
Yo, get out! Go for a walk.
Just plain cool, no notes. And speaking of the Medici crime family,
I simply can't wait to cut you to pieces again and again and again!
Black Dahlia.
Dahlia is the top enforcer of the Medicis, and an all-around bad apple who loves pain given and taken. She craves violence and loves the thrill of life or death combat, so she really doesn't need an excuse to come to the Makai world. Dahlia uses a wide variety of tricks and weapons, primarily her grenade launcher arm, which can be loaded with 6 different types of shots. For a crazy spin, let's say one of her assists is a grenade shot. Whichever grenade is the first in the chamber while she is active is the type of shot she uses in her assist, meaning you could alter her assist mid-fight depending on the shots loaded. Now, back when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was being made, the developers stated that they had a big problem with too many sword and gun characters. Well, this time around we have a lot of sword and spell characters, so it felt right to put in another firearms user as well. And consider the team up here. BB Hood is supposed to be a representative of Little Red Riding Hood. And who is she going to see? Her grandma. Well, Granny's got a grenade launcher in this story. These two characters would play off each other so well, allies or enemies. And in a lot of ways, Dahlia is the Skullgirls play on the concept created by Bonnie Hood. And she's not the only one.
Darling, you are not ready for what you are about to face.
Yes, I'm talking about the beautiful Egyptian-themed songstress of the Skullgirls lineup, Eliza, who is actually host to a powerful monster called a parasite, named Sekhmet in this case. And even though she is a clear iteration of Anakaris, her style and gameplay are very different. She's not even a mummy. She consumes blood to gain power and retain her youth, so she's really closer to a vampire. As an ancient and powerful being, Eliza has a god complex and is narcissistic to boot, so the opportunity to acquire greater power or prevent others from getting it is plenty of motive for her to cross over into the Makai. Her fighting style of switching in and out of Sekhmet, mixing between slow heavy specials and fast rushing attacks, would be a diverse gameplay, which is one of the most important parts of a tag fighter, where you're trying to cover as many bases as possible. Which leads to our next fighter.
Time for your physical. I'll cut you down to size.
The last Skullgirl on the list is Valentine, the buxom nurse ninja of the roster. First, she somewhat checks the mad scientist, scary doctor, evil nurse horror box. Next, we have no ninjas. Most ninjas are just too serious, no nonsense, straight shooters to pass the vibe check. But Valentine gets around that with her hospital gimmick. She also has a super where she can revive dead team members, like the Soul Stone in MVCI. As for the story, last we saw her, she was back in cahoots with Dr. Braindrain at Lab Zero. They would surely be monitoring the situation around Marie and Lab 8, so they would definitely want to know what was going on if some of their subjects suddenly went through a tear in reality to do battle in another. Braindrain himself would be preoccupied by a certain story teaser to leave his lab, so the task would surely fall to Valentine. But Braindrain could make cameos in some way to reinforce the mad scientist hook, like through a communicator or telepathy. And there's the 6 Skullgirls I would pick. I really think Beowulf could have been amazing gameplay-wise with his hype mechanic, wrestling moves, and imagine teaming up with Talbane for a double Beast Cannon super, but he really just has no business in the Makai. Squiggly was another close one, with very cool undead imagery and her camera manipulating mechanics, but she got squeezed out when Marie was made into an official character. Now, for the next set of fighters, we're going to have to make adaptations again, so we're really looking for characters that can fit the vibe, but also fulfill a role or function Capcom could build off of. So let's start with our first indie fighter. One of the first big games of the indie renaissance, Shovel Knight exploded onto the scene back in 2014 and made its mark with a colorful, pixelated world, fun gameplay combining several classic platformers and some outlandish, light-hearted humor. And since then it has expanded into several DLCs and spin-off games. We're pulling the spooky option from this franchise, Spectre Knight, the armor-clad wraith who fights with a scythe, which really is an impractical weapon, but damn if it ain't cool. He can also throw his blade round-trip style, summon undead, and throw out sickles. On top of that, he can teleport, hover, air dash, and wall cling. Now import some sweet scythe moves from characters like Gordeau, Ruby, and Testament. Put it all together, shake it all up, and you've got something between Virgil and Strider, a vicious but squishy fighter. And maybe for a cherry on top, we'll give him some sort of orbiting sickles, maybe reminiscent of dancing swords from Spiral or Death from the Castlevania games. And while we're on the subject of knights, yeah, of course we're going there, but it's not the first character you'd think. Once again, we are pulling from the spooky pick from the game and going with Troop Master Grimm, the leader of the Grimm Troop, an insidious band of traveling performers that feed on the essence of forgotten lands. Added with the Gods and Nightmares DLC, Grimm was a powerful optional boss that greatly resembled Dracula fights from the old Castlevania games. He has a multi-shot fireball from his cape, ground fissures, teleporting in a burst of smoke and flame, fast claw swipes, a dive kick, and a dragon punch. He even shapeshifts into a little bat bug guy. Oh, that's so cute. And he does it all while looking insanely cool. And did I mention his kick-ass theme song? The art style is a bit simple, but I think it could be really neat to see how Capcom would give this guy a glow-up for the big leagues. Something like Devora from Mortal Kombat, but softened up and stylized like QB. Now, in Hollow Knight, you could use the Dream Nail to challenge an even stronger form of Grimm called Nightmare King Grimm. And this is where I would add in the Dark Phoenix mechanic. I know, but hear me out. I think it's a really neat idea, it just needs balancing. A good fighting game needs sauce. It needs table turners, interesting mechanics, and systems to make things wild or random to stay interesting. In this case, a player has to build a team fine-tuned for Phoenix, has to build the meter for Phoenix, and generally can't spend it otherwise. They have to protect Phoenix and run a big risk using her as an assist. And the reward for the player that goes through all those hoops is an overpowered, yes, but still squishy character with a draining HP pool, and I don't think that's a bad thing. In fact, when another player overcomes those odds and defeats Dark Phoenix, it always makes for a hype moment. So I think it should be in. Just nerf it in some ways and make it better in others. And if it really is so egregious, Nightmare King could always be an install super. Anyway, just my thoughts. Moving on, our next indie fighter is...
You blew it! You totally screwed yourself! Nobody fly home and leaves in one piece. Tell you what,
Next up is the ghastly overlord of the subcon forest from A Hat in Time, Snatcher. He's a malevolent spirit who loves to trick and trap people that enter his domain and force them into unfair labor contracts, lest they risk losing their souls forever or getting decapitated, or both. He has a mean sense of humor and loves to toy and joke with his victims. Also, his wavy, wacky, inflatable tube man body, the jump scares, and different outfits make him a great addition. And if you dig into the lore, you'll find out that Snatcher has quite the dark backstory that makes him absolutely worthy of a Darkstalker spot. Maybe we edge him up just a little bit, perhaps the Heartless from Kingdom Hearts for inspiration? Ultimately, Hat Kid squares up with Snatcher in a chapter end boss fight, which is where we'll start picking up moves. He can send out ground waves, throw exploding vials, summon large pillars of dark fire, and other moves similar to Dormamu and Doctor Strange. I'd also make a counter special where the screen goes black and the opponent is forced into a 50-50 situation. The cardboard standee falling away afterwards is the exact kind of cartoon weirdness we're looking for. Another super would see him send out his minions like Tronbon's Lunch Rush super. Imagine the extra salt of some minions carrying signposts that say "You stink" or "You have no friends" while you're getting trampled. In the air, I would give him very floaty movement, similar to Arakune from Blaze Blue. Just the movement, don't panic people. And on the ground, he could quickly tunnel under like Rocket Raccoon. Overall, Snatchy would be a tricky fighter with a diverse set of tools and attacks. But our next indie fighter is what you would call a straight shooter. Literally, a straight shooter. The Lich is the final boss of Enter the Gungeon, and with his favorite revolver and a copy of the Ammonomicon in hand, the Lich is a mean, lean gunslinging machine. Lich would be the absolute zoner of the roster, using a whole variety of firearms to ventilate opponents. Just imagine the coolest, or not so cool, combination of gun characters and throw them together and there you go. To bring that Gungeon flavor, let's give him a dodge roll, or a sort of low cover he can kick out and fire over, like when you kick over tables and barrels for cover. And let's give him a few blanks per round that allow him to clear the screen of all enemy projectiles. From there, give him some weird and wacky firearms as specials or supers. These could cover for functions as well. For example, we could give him Hyper Viper Beam, but just call it Hyper Science Gun. And for his level 3, I'm imagining him conjuring skeletal hands that pop out of the ground and hit, something like level 3 super from Dormamu. If it hits, the character is pulled into the ground and finds themselves in the Lich's lair of the Gungeon, held in place by skeletal hands, making them into a makeshift target. Pan over to the Lich, who calls forth his minions to line up as a firing squad. At this point, you could have a random set of enemies and bosses pull up with any guns from the game as cameos. On the Lich's orders, they all open fire with an explosive finish. And I have thought about the gun that kills the past, but I just don't think there's a way to implement some sort of time rewinding mechanic that isn't insanely broken. Now our next indie entry is a lot smaller in scope and popularity, but it's definitely in the right zone for the Darkstalkers vibe check. A game you can get on Steam for exactly $0 with a copyright-free soundtrack. A game made so the creator could generate a community to make fan art and other content for them. A game about dapper-dressed, demented, delightfully devious demonesses and the man who wants to date them. It's Helltaker, the 2020 block-pushing puzzle game that made a moderate splash, not for its short and basic puzzle gameplay, but with its eccentric cast of stylish devils. So, who is my pick? No, not the protagonist, no, not the horny one, nor the cranky one, or the hungover one, or the clearly corrupted angel. No, believe it or not, this game actually has a final boss, and her name is Judgment, the High Prosecutor. Her job is punishing the wicked and sinful, and she loves what she does. She would attack with her claws up close like oh so many Rushdown characters before, but she also has her chains of punishment, so she could attack like Ghost Rider or Omega Red, whipping and lashing opponents from long range, making her a fierce opponent both near and far. Then we give her a slashing combo super, a grab super where she puts opponents through the Sid machine to grind them into paste, and for her level 3 super, we'll have a team up cinematic where you can smuggle in all of the Helltaker harem to gang up on the opponent, possibly in some sort of crepe-based dispute. Demons love sugar after all. Don't get in between them and their sugar. There will be blood. And speaking of blood, yes, our last indie combatant is the young god of blood from the Hades games, Zagreus. Again, when I first slotted this character, Hades 2 didn't even exist, but here we are in 2026 with the sequel already out, so maybe we can plug Milinui in as a skin as well. Zagreus would have a variety of moves based on his 6 weapons from the game, and I imagine it would look like Taskmaster from MVC3 or Monster Hunter from MVCI. He would have a shield charge, a single shot spell, and either a spear throw on the ground or a plunging a sword attack from the air with splash damage. Now here's the trick. Similar to characters like Phoenix Wright, Zagreus would have icons near the super meter that indicate those special moves. By performing a special command, he could receive a boon that would buff his specials with unique properties. By changing the input, you could change all of his specials. This way, you could customize Zagreus' arsenal per round, just like you customize your loadout per run in Hades. And if you line up all the boons to the same god, one of his supers would become a call, bringing out the corresponding member of the Greek pantheon for a devastating attack. And that wraps up the indie section. I did have a lot of different ideas floating in and out of this part of the roster, but I'm pretty satisfied with where I've ended up. And believe it or not, it just so happens that we're in a crazy stars aligned situation here in 2026. You see, Bloodstained has a sequel coming out this year, Hades 2 is out, Hollow Knight's Silk Song is out with DLC on the way, Enter the Gungeon is working on a sequel, and Yacht Club Games has their new game, Mina the Hollower, slated to come out this year as well. Think of the cross promotions! Now sadly, this last section of fighters doesn't have any cross promotion opportunities coming up as far as I know, and they don't necessarily come closest to the vibe check. But damn it, this is my imaginary game and these characters are too cool to be denied.
Available for your home in 1995, only on Nintendo Ultra 64. Killer Instinct.
We are going with Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct is definitely edgy enough for the job, but some characters are just too edgy or too redundant. That said, I did have an idea for unique team supers that are extra powerful, but require specific team compositions, and my picks here round out some of those teams. So, who among these killers is getting a vacation to the Makai? Well, let's start with the most obvious choice. In the course of making this video, I came across several other Darkstalkers 4 videos out there, and almost every single one had Hisako in it. She's arguably the coolest addition to the 2013 Killer Instinct roster. In fact, when I was first formulating this idea, Hisako was probably the first character I thought of. Heck, I'm pretty sure a showdown between Hisako and Bishamon might have been the scene that inspired this whole idea for me. But for those who don't know, Hisako is a vengeful spirit called an Onryo, who uses an assortment of ghostly powers to attack. For example, for one of her throws, she possesses your body and painfully contorts you. For her gameplay, the only thing I would change is giving Hisako both of her weapons and allow her to swap. Maybe throw in some references to The Ring or The Grudge, and some new moves to bring some more of that cinema appeal, and you're golden. Moving on. Next, we have Sadira the Assassin. The main reason for this pick is that we have no Spider-Man function. Someone who can zip across the screen and manipulate opponents from afar. I would lean even further into the spider aesthetic to help her blend in more. And that's pretty much all you need to do. Throw in some unique interactions with QB and you're good to go. I really wanted to get one of the big, iconic, original KI characters in, and Fulgore just wasn't going to work, so we're going with Glacius. He makes a great foil for Pyron as an elemental-based alien, and though Sasquatch has ice-themed specials, his main thing is just Unga Bunga beatdowns, so I think Glacius has a place. I would lean more into the alien side, the Roswell Conspiracy, X-Files, Signs. Give him some of that hokey Hollywood alien flavor to make him a bit more unique and fill that horror cinema slot that Pyron really isn't filling. How is it we don't have a skeleton in this spooky, scary skeleton game? We're gonna correct that with Spinal. Pretty much nothing to say. Maybe add some functionality to his shield like Captain America? Pull a few things from those Pirates of the Caribbean movies for a little comedy or references and call it a wrap. And now for our first somewhat redundant pick, we have Mira. As far as gameplay is concerned, I see Dimitri and Bloodless as more balanced characters, whereas Mira is much more feral and rushdown as a vampire. She also has her Mercury blood mechanic, going to further differentiate her, but that means she will need to have a large health pool and multiple specials to drain HP to be viable in a tag fighter environment. I want to say she needs one more gimmick, like maybe being able to armor herself with her bat summons, or something like that. Just something in her kit to help her get more opportunities to get HP back. And for our final pick, we have Conra. So Anakaris is weird, floaty, and slow. Eliza is somewhat more balanced, but Conra would be fast and a tricky mix-up character. And although he is a mummy, his specials don't look like anything the other two do, mostly sand attacks and other weird things. So I think he's different enough to be a fit. Also, I think it would be neat if he had an assist where he could catapult the active player with his sand hand in some way. Might be cool. Like I said, I wanted to make unique level 4 supers that are extra powerful but require specific team comps utilizing all 3 team members. And one of them definitely has to be our Egyptian-themed characters entombing an opponent in some sort of elaborate curse ritual. And at this point, we have 24 Darkstalkers and 24 Incursion Fighters for a nice, neat roster of 48. I think we've got a good collection of spooks, styles, and gameplay functions. And there's still some room for flexibility here too, if some new official things throw everything off. You could cut it off there, and you'd be great. But this is my fantasy project here, and I think we could go further. So we have one more category of fighters crashing into the Makai world, either baked in or as DLC. For a long, long time, fans have been saying Capcom should just make Capcom vs. Capcom. Cut out the middlemen. No collabs means no hassle, and they certainly have a massive library of characters to pull it off. So we're going to serve up a nice variety of other games that have crossover with Darkstalkers. Lord knows they've guested in other franchises for like 2 decades now, so it's time for the Makai world to host. Added bonus, the dark theme of the game means some characters that might not make the cut in other game rosters would be more than welcome here. And man, I wound up watching a lot of other imaginary sequel videos, and I guess all of the Darkstalkers fans out there are like on the same wavelength, because many of my picks are in all of those videos too. Just goes to show how united we brethren of the Dark Realm are. And for the first of those common picks, we have... No shocker here, every MVC4 fantasy roster has him in, and we have him as well. The new Pro Tag got a massive upgrade in DMC5, and his gameplay would reflect that. No need to elaborate. Now, just for the sake of being different, I was considering Urizen for this spot for a while. Not quite a big body, but larger than normal, he would fight like Urien from Third Strike. Long-reaching normals, grabs, and similar to how Urien can cast Aegis Reflector for big setups, Urizen would be able to conjure those time bubbles that slow the opponent down. But I'm trying to do one per franchise here, so I had to go with the poster boy. Next up, we have Tessa from Red Earth, aka Warzard. I know it's the obvious pick, but when I looked around the rest of the roster, I couldn't see anyone else fitting better. Kenji, Meiling, and Leo are exactly what they look like and are pretty dry as far as characters go. The bad guy, Scion, is another caster, and we're full on those. Yes, Tessa is a caster, but if you actually look at what she's doing, it's more like stage magic than classic fireballs and magic missiles and the like. She uses doves and cats and cannons and other goofy weird stuff. I also thought about Lavia the Harpy, but she just doesn't have any interesting moves. Another wild choice would have been Ravenge the Chimera, but I just don't see how you could make such a wide character viable. Also, he's Egyptian themed, which we are maxed out on. I could see Blade, but he is a total edgelord and ultimately another sword character. So, we ended up on Tessa. Resident Evil is bigger than ever, with tons of iconic characters that people would love to see in a fighting game, but not many of those characters would actually fit in the Makai world. But one recent villain has the style, the attitude, the ferocity, and the assets to earn this spot. It is, of course, Alcina Dimitrescu. Yes, the Dami Mommy of Resident Evil Village was the obvious choice, with her wicked high-class personality and the voracious monster underneath. For her gameplay, I'm envisioning something between She-Hulk and Sabretooth. When she was added to Mercenaries in Resident Evil 8, she also gained some fun new moves, like calling her daughters, sending insect swarms to harass enemies, and throwing a Vanity, which could be randomized with other RE reference items. I would give her a super where she gains a buff by applying lipstick, similar to her Thrill Gauge from Mercenaries. In homage to Jill from MVC2, I would give her the ability to call various RE baddies, and an assist where she offers some of her Sanguis Virginis, similar to Jill's Green Herb assist. And for her level 3, she can transform into her dragon form and do some sort of smash and grab, throw them up in the air, slam them down, yada yada yada, you know. Next on the list of obvious Capcom crossovers is our Power Stone rep, Jack, the sinister laughing, limb-extending, creepy slasher. His natural movement would low-profile sub-attacks, and he would have several unique movement options. Of course, he would be a bit underpowered, but you could search for the Power Stones, similar to Phoenix Wright searching for clues, or earn the Power Stones by performing certain actions like earning Dragon Balls in Dragon Ball Fighters. Collect the stones and get a massive power spike. You know the drill. And for a finishing touch, you could give him a level 4 super that costs 3 meter while powered up. I'm imagining something similar to the Hanged Man super from Capcom's JoJo Bizarre Adventure Fighter, but even more elaborate and spooky. This would hit for massive damage, but it would cancel the power-up state for the rest of the round. So, we need a Street Fighter rep, and who else do you think could fill the slot except Akuma? I mean, he literally calls himself a demon, and would jump at the chance to fight literal monsters to prove his superiority. Combine his new Street Fighter 6 moveset with the over-the-top Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 version, and call it good. Okay, I know there are other monsters and ghouls and goblins out there. I do think someone else deserves the slot, probably Astaroth, but Firebrand already has his tag fighter chops, and the only other flyer in the roster is QB. He also is one of our only small bodies on the roster too, so he barely pulls ahead as my choice. Definitely up for debate though. Okay, so hear me out. Dr. Doom is off the table, right? Well, if we squint our eyes and look at just the right angle, you know who I see? Deimos, from the Capcom beat-em-up Tower of Doom and Shadow over Mystara. Big hooded cape? Check. Skull face? Check. Powerful magic? Check and mate. Now I don't see this guy foot diving everywhere, but most everything else can be covered. He would probably also be part Dormamu, with teleports, stocking spells, and using meteors and flame pillars. His lightning bolt? That's just plasma beam. Have him summon magic missiles out of his orb. That's hidden missiles. Molecular shield, aka rocks? You could just bring that back wholesale, and no one would question it. Now, way back at the beginning, I mentioned that the sorcerer had 2 relics, the Skull Heart and a mysterious stone orb covered in glowing green runes. Upon activation, the stone opens and transforms, shaping into Abyss. Now, way back in the end credits of MVC2, we saw the core of Abyss in Ruby Heart's hands. Seeing that the power had dissipated, she tosses it into the ocean. That's it. Well, guess what? Gremory found it. Always finish the job, folks. In my full roster story mode, the team before the final boss would be Grimory, Sorcerer, and Abyss, and it would be under the Sorcerer's command. Gameplay-wise, Abyss would be the absolute tank of the game, the juggernaut. All of his moves are painfully slow, but armored and very damaging. I would combine his first two phases to make the moveset, with the green guide popping out of the armor for those ranged attacks. For his level 3, the armor bursts off and the full-size red ooze monster launches an all-out attack. Now I know I did just say one per franchise, but every time one of these Make-A-Wish rosters happens, Ruby Heart is in, and it would be kind of weird without her. She was confirmed as an unused Darkstalkers concept after all. Really nothing else needs to be said. In my own silly headcanon, she lost her eye in the initial confrontation with Abyss when a piece of its armor flew off as shrapnel. Now her old wound would act up with the revival of Abyss, telling her to set out again and hunt her old foe. I also imagine a silly side story where Spinal is insanely envious of her flying ship and tries to steal it. And for those wondering, I had no plans for a Mingo, but he definitely could come back at this point, but he's third in line for sure. And that is where I kinda end up as of writing this video. And that really irks me, because 57 is an atrocious number to end on. We could cut 1 to make a nice, neat 56, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Or we could add 3 more to get to the big 6-0, which is probably the limit for a tag fighting game anyway. But here is where I kind of start to hit the wall. I have some ideas, but nothing really jumps out at me or is like, oh yeah, that's gotta be it. So here are some of the other ideas I had. Okami. I was thinking about Nine-Tailed Fox from Okami to be a sort of evil Amaterasu to put in. There is a sequel coming, so maybe a new villain could go into this slot. Chaos Legion. Props to Matt McMuscles for this one, Sieg from Chaos Legion. I could kind of see him as a summoner fighter who can collect spirit, which makes his legions level up, kind of like Frank West, but very emo, very edgy, and kind of getting off brand. Kunitsugami. So, or Dark So, was another idea I had, but ultimately they're another sword character and not really bringing anything new to the table gameplay-wise, although incredible visually. Seriously, that game is an underrated gem. We could probably put back in a Mingo at this point too, if we decided to go to 60. There are some picks out there, but most of them feel like they would dilute the juice more than add to it. Or maybe this is an opportunity to add more Darkstalkers OCs. So yeah, if you think there's a Capcom character that could pass the vibe check, I would love to hear it. And that pretty much wraps up the roster. Obviously, it's incomplete, so I can't really finish making all of those teams I spoke about, but all of the characters don't need to be on teams anyway. So for modes, obviously we have the story, versus, training, the single fighter classic mode, but for that extra value content, we gotta bring back Chaos Tower. Now a quick rundown if you don't know what any of that is. Chaos Tower was a game mode added in the PSP Darkstalkers port that was essentially a survival mode. You pick 3 characters with 1 life bar each, and your goal was to ascend a tower of 100 floors, battling opponents with varying difficulty levels. There were branching paths, and your performance in each fight, or specific conditions met, would determine the route you would take, generally rewarding good play and completed challenges with shortcuts that skipped floors. As you climbed higher, the opponents would get tougher, and random debuffs would start to be applied that would impede your run. At the top, you would fight a max level Pyron with 4 life bars. Win and unlock a fabulous prize. Lose and it's back to the bottom. It was an interesting concept, but pretty bare bones. Now, Thorgy's Arcade pretty much nailed it in his Darkstalkers 4 Let's Make a Sequel video when he suggested taking influences from Abyss mode in Blaze Blue to add roguelike elements to the tower. But I'd like to expand on that by adding another game into the mix. Something sinister, sadistic, and spooky as this game requires. Darkest Dungeon. First off, I would have a permanent progression system to level up over time and make tower climbs easier, making it more of a roguelite where your points earned in fights would yield currency and experience. As you level up, you'll get some basic stat increases to your meter stock limit, and unlock perk slots, which could be fitted with buffs. These buffs would help get a leg up on exploration, grinding, or endgame builds, but you would only be able to slot 3 or 5 of these to maintain some randomness in each run. Because this mode is getting expanded so much, I wouldn't make characters spend currency on buffs per run, rather a one-time unlock account-wide. You would still be able to collect and stack as many other buffs as you could find in any given tower run, but those would be lost at the end of the run. As for currency, you would be able to spend it in 2 ways. The shop would contain the majority of your bonus content, skins, colors, concept art, music, extra lore, all that jazz. The shop would also open at the beginning of a run, and you would be able to purchase consumables to use in your run, just like Darkest Dungeon. There would be healing items, meter gain potions, and 1-game buffs for direct support. There would also be map items that would help navigate the tower itself. Special talismans could reveal the map, show hidden paths, point to treasure rooms, reveal traps, remove obstacles, or lead to secret encounters. There would be a fog of war that gets more dense as you ascend the tower, so extra information would be critical as you get to higher levels. There would also be accessories you could carry for unique buffs. Because all of your characters could be KO'd in a single fight, extra continue items would be sold as well. Finally, camping supplies would be available so your party could rest and heal up. I can't begin to fathom all of the fun little skits and unique interactions you could have between characters while they cozy up around a campfire. Just think of all that content. Whatever items you decide to take, choose wisely, because you have a limited inventory and you won't have enough to cover all bases. And boy, there's a lot of bases. Just like Darkest Dungeon, the tower would be randomized every run. There would be curios that might give advantages or be dangerous hazards. Traps would harm your fighters, apply debuffs, or even cause you to fall down to a lower floor. Extra powerful nemesis teams would stalk the tower. There might even be hidden bosses lurking in the shadows for those who let their curiosity get the better of them. Now, if that's all too much, that's okay. Just like Darkest Dungeon has short, medium, and long expeditions, there would be mini towers you could play as well, 10 floors and 25 floors. You could quickly fire up a casual run, which wouldn't require much forethought or lots of item investment, to grind cash or experiment with builds or just plain vibe. These towers would be more beginner friendly and would offer bonuses based on performing the game's mechanics, like snapbacks, push blocks, team hyper combos, and the like, to incentivize even the most casual of casuals to expand their knowledge set. And finally, we'll have an online leaderboard so we can have extra competitive elements. Another way that, even if you're only interested in single player, there is some encouragement to challenge yourself to get better. And that's it! The whole enchilada, soup to nuts. I don't really do social media anymore, so if anyone has anything to say, please drop it in the comments. Finally, I would like to thank all of the Darkstalkers community, but in particular, YouTubers out there who have contributed musically. Music is a big inspiration for me, For this project, I made a Darkstalkers 4 versus playlist with a lot of Darkstalkers music on it to listen to and organize my thoughts while I wrote, which really helped me stay on track. And again, a big thanks to Thorgy's Arcade for the inspiration and the courage to accept cringe and just let my silly nonsense idea exist, since it's all imaginary anyway. But if this whole video proves one thing, my love for Darkstalkers is very real. And as long as fans like myself continue to give it life, truly, the Darkstalkers are not dead.